that I still want you. Ooh, baby, and I want you to want me too. My love is wider than Victoria Lake. It's taller than Empire State. You know, I've been in a Sade mood lately. You guys remember Sade? Been listening to Sade a lot lately. Want to make sure we're on the same page, guys. What I need to know is if you guys can hear me loud and clear so that we can get the show on the proverbial road. Guys, are you well? I hope you are. I replaced, if for those of you that are regulars, you see this thing here? I replaced my clock with the hourglass only because it was confusing some people. People would look at my videos and they'd say, is your clock working? Is it broken? The clock's fine. It's just that when you use the front-facing camera on your phone, I'm using a Canon 20 Pro right now for this stream, for this live stream. And when you use the front-facing camera, everything is sort of right side up and upside down. But when you use the back camera, which is of a higher quality, it's much better. Not only is it higher quality, it shows stuff the way that it's supposed to be shown on the screen. And so because of that, I've decided to replace my regular clock with an hourglass. If you notice, if you see there, that's an hourglass. It's a real hourglass. I mean, the sand seeps. You know the word seeps? It sort of trickles through the little thin convergence in 1 hour. I'm not going to be here for an hour. I mean, don't get the wrong idea. We're not going to sit here and talk for an hour. You've got stuff to do. I've got places to go, people to see, and things to do. Okay, so let's be clear about that. Tell me now, am I loud and clear? Because if I am, we can get this thing on the road. We can get this popping. We can get this crack-a-lacking. I can't see your comments. All I see is loud and clear. I see who's that? Hanganda. I see him. He's a regular. Well, guys, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. First of all, I want to make reference. A few days ago, we heard that Nixon Chilangua gave himself up to the police over there in his constituency. He went to the police station and gave himself up. And I must tell you that watching him come out, you know, he drove in with he sat in the back seat of a Hilux. He had a driver, an assistant. They pulled up to the police station, and somebody tell me in the comments where that was. Was that in Kawambwa? Because, you know, on Facebook, you have to be very clear. On Facebook, you have to cross all the T's, dot all the I's, because somebody will call you out on it. Tell me, where was that? Whereby Nixon Chilangua went to hand himself over to the authorities. Was that in Kawambwa? Tell me in the comments below if that's correct. And if that's correct, let's move on. Okay. Crystal clear, somebody says. You need to tell me, guys, where was that? Okay, so that we can get the show on the road. Yes, okay. So Nickson pulled up to the police station, and he was sitting in the back seat. His assistant comes out from the front, opens the door, while Nickson steps out of the car. And as he walked from his car to the police station, my heart just went out to him. I felt bad watching him limp towards the station, and that made me feel bad for some reason. Don't ask me why. I just felt bad about that. And I don't know what the update is. We don't know anything beyond that. Okay. All we know is that he gave himself up to the authorities. And of course, we will wait to hear what the outcome of that comeuppance was. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it appears to me that Munir Zulu has not learned his lesson. Munir maintains, get a hold of this. You guys know who Munir is. Munir spent some time in jail because he offered himself as surety for Kaiser Zulu, who's still at large. We don't know where the heck Kaiser Zulu is. Munir was held in contempt. He made some new arrangement to where the judge let him out. But the caveat was, we'll let you go, but you have to make sure, you have to make doubly certain that Kaiser Zulu is in court, and they've given him a court date. Well, Munir hasn't learned his lesson, because Munir has said, he's issued a statement saying, even though I went through this horrible experience of being a surety for somebody that ran away, somebody that escaped, somebody that absconded, somebody that's still at large, even though I did that and I was arrested and I was subsequently released, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop signing or stop being a surety for other people simply because of one bad apple. Well, you know what that tells me? It tells me you haven't learned your lesson. The great Oprah Winfrey once said that, God, this was just an example. It's not scriptural. In other words, you won't find this example in the Bible. This is not in the canon of scripture. Okay. This is not inspired by the Holy Spirit or anything. This is just something Oprah said, but it bears repeating, and it lends to the authenticity of this example. And it's this: Oprah Winfrey once said that, God teaches us lessons in varying degrees. For example, he'll throw a little pebble on your head, and if you don't get it, he'll throw a brick on your head. And if you don't get it, he will throw a whole house on the top of your head until you learn the lesson. What does that mean? It means sometimes lessons come to us in varying degrees. And if you don't learn the lesson, you keep having to learn it, but at a greater degree. So if Munir Zulu is still in the habit of sureties, he's going to go through the same thing. You know why? Because he hasn't learned the lesson. He hasn't learned it. A regular umuntu uwakwata matwina masenses 5 will walk out of that experience and say, you know what? I don't want to go through that again. I don't. And so I'm going to change the way I do things. It's like that old saying, if nothing changes, guess what? Nothing changes. Did you get that? Some of you caught that. Some of you, chamipita. Let me say it again, because I think that's important. If nothing changes, then guess what? Nothing changes. So in order to obtain change, you have to change. So anyway, Munir says he'll keep doing that. And we wish him luck with that. And then he says he's hired a private investigator to find out where Kaiser Zulu is. I read that and I thought to myself, Munir, what do you think this is, Hollywood? Huh? You think this is Mulholland Drive? Huh? You think this is Baltimore? You think this is Shreveport, Louisiana? You think this is Cleveland, Ohio? This ain't Bogalusa. This ain't New Orleans, Louisiana. Kuti, I've hired a special private investigator. This is Zambia. You show me one private investigator. I've never heard of a private investigator. If they're there, I've never heard of them. How are you going to hire a private investigator? From where? It's safer to say, I've asked some police officers who may know where he is. I've engaged them to help me locate Kaiser Zulu. But when you say things like, oh, I've hired a private investigator, You make it sound Hollywoodish. This ain't Hollywood, Munir, okay? Get your head out of the clouds and get busy living or get busy dying. There you go. That's a quote from my favorite movie, The Shawshank Redemption. Lastly, Miles Asampa has withdrawn his surety. I hope I'm saying that correctly. You remember Miles was a surety for this man named Commander 2. What was his name? I have it here. Francis who? Tell me in the comments. I'll tell you now his name. Francis something. I've got it here. It'll pop up here in a second. Just give me a moment. Miles Asampa has withdrawn his surety. He is no longer surety for one. Here it is. I'll throw it up here. Francis Mwewa is his name. Francis Mwewa, during the PF, he's the one that ran Intercity Bus Station. Intercity Bus Station has a river of money that flows through it. I mean, the money that comes through Intercity and the money that flows through City Market is unconscionable. Because you see, back in the PF, during the PF, Davis Wheeler made it very clear that institutions like City Market, markets like City Market and Intercity, these were the preserve of the PF Secretariat. Do you know what it means to fokoto? Ever heard of that phrase? In English, we say to fokoto. The NPF used to fokoto. To fokoto means you just grab a bunch of money arbitrarily without knowing how much is in there. You know, when you see let's say you see a bucket of money full of cash, and then you take your hand, this is an arm, this is a hand. You take your hand, and then you dip your hand into the bucket of money, and then you just arbitrarily grab a bunch of cash. In English, it's to fokoto. The NPF used to fokoto. I mean, here recently, we've ever since the UPND came into power, of course, we're not saying that they're perfect. They've got their own challenges. There's no perfect administration, but there is an effort to make things different. There is an effort from this administration to do things slightly differently. Again, they're not perfect, but we recently heard that ever since the NPF left Intercity, Intercity made a surplus of 9 million kwacha. 9 million! Money that used to go into the hands of these PF vagabonds. Why? Because the PF used to fokoto. Not anymore. So Miles has withdrawn his surety. He is no longer surety for Francis Mwewa, aka Commander 2. Commander 2 was the guy that was riding high on the saddle. He was the be-all and end-all. He was the law over there at Intercity. What he said went. Not anymore. Well, the sun has set, and it's time for a completely different deal. So Miles basically went to the court and said, look, I have a change of heart. Okay, I've changed my mind. I know he's my homeboy, but I've changed my mind. I no longer want to be a surety. So he's withdrawn. The court they've held Francis. He's being held now in jail until he can find another surety to sign for him so that he can be released. That's the name of the game, you know. And I know where this came from. And the only reason I know this is because, you know, I've been married for 23 years, and I know how wives think. You know, wives have a sixth sense. I guarantee you, not that Miles told me this, but because Because, I'm married. I know how wives think. A wife will whisper in your ear and say, you've seen what happened to your friend, don't you? Huh? Have you seen what's happened to your homeboy, Munir? What, you want that to happen to you? Well, if you don't want that to happen to you, you go over there and you withdraw your surety. I'm not going to sit here and wait for you to get arrested. What's going to happen to me and the babies? Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Go over there and withdraw your name and tell them you've had a change of heart. They'll understand. They're people. Nabobantu, balaumfwa, tabakaneo. I'm telling you, that's what happened. You know why? Because wives have a sixth sense. Well, hey guys, I gotta go. That was my daily brief. It's 20 minutes to lunch. What are you guys doing for lunch? I know where I'm going for lunch. I hope you guys have a fantastic lunch. Thank you for watching. God bless. Bye.